Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil rock.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about riffs? Talking about all them riffs, baby. It's me.
Notes.
I'm a host. Austin Paulson. With me, as always, are also hosts, friends, music, Swindle, Dylan. How are you? Good to see you.
Me host.
Me bald.
Very.
Me bald.
That hair would get in the way of all those riffs.
You ooga.
And booga.
He's got all his hair on his knuckles.
I have had hair on my hand since I was 7.
That's where it shifted, slowly shifted.
It was
down the body.
It just melts. It just
You know, it's surprising all the dragging those knuckles do that there's still hair
God. That's remarkable. That is perfect. One of my favorite things to bring up about all of us is I think there was a point where all of us were in a room and like I handed Austin one of my guitars and like it's very clear I have long arms and it hits him and he's like, fuck, this thing's at like my knees. Like, what are you doing? But Austin, I think you picked a record out for us to listen to.
Nope. See ya. This is a show.
Goodbye, folks.
All right. Be great. Yes, I did. This is gonna be a bit of a short one, maybe. We'll see. If you're looking at the runtime, who knows? Maybe this is under an hour, maybe it's 2. We've surprised ourselves in the past, but we are talking about an EP today that is just under 10 minutes. It is one of my favorite things to listen to if I am just not looking for anything super long, but something fun, a pick-me-up. I think this is for the most part, a very positive, encouraging, and just wonderful 7 songs, basically. I am, of course, talking about Punch's Nothing Last EP from 2011. And let's just get it off the back. I'm pretty sure Swindle introduced me to this EP many, many moons ago. So I'll give you the floor. Swindle, how did you discover this EP or band in general?
I think I found Punch through the blogs, much like many other bands that we have talked about, and I'm sure we'll talk about. I found them through the Chug Life blog spot.
Oh yeah.
But I think I started listening to them maybe when they came out with their first LP, Punch, when they came out with the self-titled joint. If it wasn't the self-titled one, it was Push Pull.
Gotcha. And those are great. I love those records. I think this is the reason I picked this was because it was maybe the first thing I heard and, just instantly caught my ear. Because I think around the time I heard it, which would have been like 2012, 2013, I was like very young and impressionable. And the feedback that kind of introduces us to the, the record was like, I have no idea what's happening, but this is exactly what I need in this moment right now. Dylan Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Any relationship with this band? Any relationship with this record?
Absolutely none.
Yeah.
So Swindle has been listening to this band, I think not terribly long after we met. And he would post about it in the old days of Facebook and Facebook walls before it was a timeline.
Yeah, when you could make posts that were just when it was acceptable to just make lyric posts.
Yep. And I caught on and was like, fuck, all right, I checked this out. And I think I listened to probably this one.
Yeah.
And maybe even the full length that came after it.
Sure.
And was like, all right, this is hyper aggressive and fast shit. And to be honest, I don't think I've listened to it since then. So it was a good quick pick me up. But with all of this and just kind of noticing the trend of like what I'm into, what you guys are into, and maybe what we're all into, the thing I've noticed the most is you guys really enjoy really fast, short, violent spurts of music. So my question for the both of you is, what is it about that draws you into it? Because that's what I want to know. After listening to this, it made me go, okay, I get it. I know it's heavy. I enjoy it, but it doesn't hook me in the way it does you guys, you know? Whereas like some of the tracks on here, which we'll get into, it's like there's really fast shit going on and it's like 2 chords being played.
Yeah.
Whereas like my brain goes, oh, there's fast shit. Let me lock in here, do all this, and like, you know, create some sort of fucking binary formula. What is it about this type of stuff that really gets like your fucking motor running?
I think the main thing that I would probably say is that my brain is kind of going at that speed already. So to find something that matches and mirrors that is like, wow, okay, this is perfect. I love aggressive music of all kinds, but for whatever reason, the faster, more like aggressive stuff like in that falls in line with this has just always been enticing. And maybe that's because I outside of like classic rock, punk music was probably like the first thing that really felt like my own thing. And it, even that is still pretty rudimentary, like, the Ramones and Black Flag, but that's the stuff I really kind of fell in love with first. And then more extreme music. And it's probably why I got into thrash metal first, because that was like, okay, the next maybe logical step for someone who liked kind of more traditional metal in general. But all to say, I think it just kind of matches where I am at emotionally most of the time. Swindle, I don't know if you feel the same.
I think that this and this, they call themselves like a fastcore band. It's kind of power violence, but power violence and like fast hardcore is just an extension of punk. Like the things that drew me into Minor Threat and Black Flag and Bad Brains is exactly the same thing that makes me like Punch or Vaccine or Spaz or whatever. It's just like real fast, short songs, people mad, and I think a lot of what makes me like music is like being able to draw emotion out of it. And I think if I hear a song where I can understand why a person is angry, not necessarily like understand the lyrics or like hear what they're saying or know what they're saying, but if I like look at the lyric sheet and the lyrics are like, this is why I'm pissed off, this pissed me off, and I think they're pissed off, then that's going to make me like it a lot more probably than like not to talk shit or anything, but like in a death metal song, if they're like screaming about disemboweling people, I'm like, that's not fucking real. Like, you're not mad about that. Like, that's not a real human emotion. Like, yeah. Again, like, not to talk shit about things people that listen to this podcast like, for sure. People like death metal. But yeah, I am drawn to like the real life anger that like Megan definitely felt when she was like fucking wailing the vocals of this band.
Let's come on, what else is Dylan like?
Just shit all over it.
Little Nicky, why do not the
So well then this kind of, because what I've noticed too is like, obviously we all like different things, and we like stuff that's a little bit more I don't want to use the phrase mainstream, but maybe things that are a little bit more accessible. We all have an ear for that. Things that are maybe far more abstract, we all have an ear for that. And like we've kind of gone down my rabbit hole of like what got me into where I'm at. And that may be because like, yeah, I had like classic rock bands and stuff that like I heard on the radio, I heard from my dad, but for whatever reason, that kind of modern era of heavy music that appeared in like the early 2000s really defined me. And I kind of went backwards. I found the classic bands, I found all that, and kind of revolved around that. And I never, like, I knew that, and you guys have known that about me, and I've never asked, like, what did it? Why does this type of music make so much sense for you guys? Because, and it may be the fact that it doesn't reach me as much because, like, I heard those things to my ear that are like, there's nothing more extreme than this. Like, I heard that so early on that I'm kind of, it's like when you watch a horror movie, when you watch horror movies for too long, like we all have, we watch something, it's like, okay. Like, oh, yeah, a fucking knife through an eyeball through a wall. It's like, what's that going to do to us anymore? It's like, okay, seen this, been there, done it. And I've never asked that to you guys. I've never asked that question. Like, what does it? What does this music do to you guys? Because I've seen you guys, like, you guys will go down a grind and or like power violence rabbit hole. And it's like, bands I've never heard of. I'm like, where are we going? What is this? What language are we speaking? But then of course, like I'll throw some silly fucking band out and it's like, okay, let's put the old man back in the home.
Well, I do like a lot of that stuff as well.
Right.
And, you know, Cannibal and Death speaks to me in other ways, but maybe in a similar kind of, like it evokes something out of me in a different way. Whereas this, I feel like punk and hardcore, and why this record or this band is so important to me is that, like I said, it hit me at the right time. It was kind of exactly what I needed to hear. But, you know, lyrically, kind of like what Swindle was mentioning, it really resonated with me because a lot of the themes, especially on this EP, they're just like relatable shit that any person out there in the world has dealt with or thought about. And I think this album, especially the way Megan is singing, screaming, like top of her lungs, it feels like when I hear this, from the moment it turns on, it's like Megan is grabbing me by the shoulders and yelling at me to like, stop waiting for, if you want to do something, you can do it. Like, just, you can't be sitting there on your ass and waiting for it. Like, if you want to start a band, there are no rules. Like, you don't have to be a certain age, like just fucking do it. And that has like had a profound impact on me personally, because, you know, I think this is certainly not easy music to play, but I feel like if you have something that like you want to say, punk and hardcore is certainly like an accessible, like anyone can do it. Anybody can like put their own take on something like that. So that's what certainly resonated about this band and the EP, or just the style of music in general. It felt like, okay, I can do that. And you should do it if you really want to. Like, people should do that shit. So with that said, Punch. Let's talk about Punch. A little brief history. I don't know if I got everything right. Wasn't a ton of information that I could find. I found some podcasts, some articles and stuff, so we kind of just like pieced it together. But essentially, what I've formulated is that this band is from the Bay Area. They're from San Francisco. They formed in 2006, basically from the ashes of two other fast power violence hardcore bands, the Rosenbaums and Doppelganger. Essentially, both of these bands had fizzled out, and members of these projects decided that they should start a band together. And mainly Keith, which is spelled differently at times, was writing songs in mid-2006. So he seems kind of like the person who is responsible for a lot of the music or the riffs for this band as well. Then you have Megan O'Neill, who knew Keith through going to shows and being kind of involved in the DIY scene. I know Megan was like going to shows with her brother, but knowing Keith and knowing that Keith was trying to start a band like this, Megan was like, oh, can I like try out? I think actually there was a story that Megan had suggested where there was a story that Megan stated where, I don't know if one of the bands that was in between Doppelganger and Punch was in the studio recording, and Megan joined on one of the sessions to do like gang vocals or something. And that was kind of the first time that Megan had like kind of got the itch to be in a hardcore band. Like, oh, this is really fun. I think I can do this. Never, dawned on her that like this would be a possibility. And so by September, I think Megan had like gone to the first practice, tried out, and it was like, great, you're in the band. Let's do this. So the original lineup of Punch consisted of Keith, guitarist by the name of Jeff, don't know the last name, Freddie on drums, Dan Africa on bass, and then Megan O'Neill on vocals. So that's essentially how it starts. And they played their first show at the Gilman in April of 2007. And, with this band forming in 2006, playing their first show pretty quickly from what I understand, they also did like their first tour in 2007. Like things started to kind of happen pretty quickly. They released a demo in 2007, which was available at some of their shows and via MySpace, the era of the MySpace demo, which I love that it's kind of MySpace is kind of coming back. Do you guys see this with like Instagram? I saw you. We finally get songs on our pages again. Now I'm waiting for the moment we get all those wacky fucking cursors that you can download and destroy your parents' computer with. What was your song? Did you have a song on your MySpace profile? Did you even have those? I don't even know.
I had a bunch of different ones.
Oh,
I like changed my shit all the time.
Yeah.
Once a day, once a week, whatever it may have been.
It was early enough to like, I feel like people, if you were like paying attention, you could see when and where I like discovered a band for the first time and just got obsessed. Like, oh, Austin's page is entirely decked out in Iron Maiden shit. Like, here it is, Aces High, full blast. Like, that's what it is. But yeah, so anyway, demo in 2007. You have the Eyeless EP in 2008. This is their debut EP recorded October 17th at the House of Faith. It's a studio located in Oakland with Bart Thurber, who was formerly of the band Whipping Boy, which featured Eugene Robinson, who is a former member of Oxbow. I think that just happened. But anyway, So there's some tie-ins there. This was released on
Discos Huelga.
Most of the band's like output was released on this label, as well as 65 Thrashcore, which is pretty famous, like underground hardcore label. But Discos was a label that was operated by a future member of Punch, Val, who is also a member of
Loma Prieta.
Those bands are definitely connected. They like shared some members over the years, but Val ran this label and would continue to put out stuff, especially when he joined the band later on their debut record, I believe, which Swindle mentioned as their self-titled record, released in 2009. It's the first one that Val played drums for. And I should also mention that this is the first example of Jack Shirley also recorded the band's output through the remainder of their active status. So you would basically see like, the band essentially recording at the Atomic Garden studio in the Bay. Jack is a native of the Bay, I believe, but you might know him for his work with Gouge Away, Oathbreaker, and of course, like most, if not all of the Death Heaven output as well. So good stuff. I love these first couple releases. Again, making things happen pretty quickly. Like within a few years of them being a band, they were already going to Japan, going to tour in Europe. So they're just like making shit happen, which is very inspiring to me. There's just kind of like, kind of look into this. But some other releases that came out around the before our EP that we're going to be talking about today. You had a Rainfest cassette, which was like a demo single that they put out just to like kind of sell at the Rainfest in 2010 in Tacoma, Washington. This was like a few day festival in May around that time. And then just to kind of give you an idea of what the lineup was like, you have bands like Backtrack playing, Black Breath, Disembodied, Foundation, Nails, Rotting Out, Chibalba. This was like 100 copies and they just sold them out, and it had a couple songs featured on it. That would eventually come out on their sophomore album, Push Pull, again, released on those same labels, again, recorded by Jack Shirley. Keith also does like all of the layout, I think, and art for this band. Like anything you've seen, Keith likely had a hand in. This sophomore record is also the first appearance of Brian, who is a member of
Loma Prieta.
as well. He plays bass. At some point, Jeff leaves, their original guitarist, Jeff, and Dan Africa moves from bass to guitar. Then you have Brian on bass. Of course,
Loma Prieta.
they do a split with this band in 2011. I love that this split especially is because it's like the bands are doing covers of the other band. I love that shit. I think that's awesome. And again, recorded by Jack Shirley. But anyway, after the split, they had like this. It looked like this followed before the EP, but Flexi Your Head was cool. They put like together this zine essentially to kind of pass out on a East Coast tour in March of 2011. And so if you got the zine, it came with like a postcard that you could send in, and then they would send you like basically like this flexi that was like a medley of covers. Like the zine itself was about covers, and it compiled like 10 songs that were cover, worthy. And it talked about just hardcore in general, I believe. But
the name's a reference to fucking Minor Threat song.
Right. Yeah.
Flex Your Head.
Fuck yeah. So
you're telling me that if I send in 6 box tops, cereal box tops, I can get this fucking EP, man, I'm gonna wail on some fucking shredded wheat.
Do it. I bet there's still the PO box still works. I bet.
It's not in there. Where's my spoon that turns a different color in the milk?
Where's my whistle? Yeah. Oh, the spoon. Yeah. Jeez. Oh my God.
Deep cut.
All right. So the EP itself comes out in June of 2011. Sophomore EP is the last EP they put out. It is released on Discos. It's released on 65 Thrashcore, and it is also released on Death Wish Inc., Converge, Jake Bannon, whatever, you know who we're talking about. Again, also recorded by Jack Shirley, who did the tracking, mixing, and mastering for this record. You also, the interesting thing about this, I found, and I don't know, maybe the band was on tour at some point. Not really sure how this happened, but so you have most of the record being made and recorded at the Atomic Garden in the Bay. But then there's also, I found some credits to Christoph Schiedel, don't know how to exactly pronounce it, apologies, who did the additional guitar tracking. He is the owner of the 79 Sound recording studio, but this is a recording studio in Germany. So I don't know if they like sent stuff off or if they were on tour and they just like, hey, you could stop here. I have a friend, or we know this guy. We could just do some additional, stuff for the record to kind of put the last few touches. Not really sure. If anyone knows, please let me know. I would love to hear about it. But with all that kind of brief history, again, kind of hard to find like all of it in today. Like in today's climate, I couldn't really like, I tried searching like everywhere, like blogs that were still up and running, websites that still had a domain, I guess, available, but that's what I found. Yeah, so
that you had like that Idiotech or Idiotic or whatever, that website, they had like 15 articles about Punch, but it was always like the same like press release spiel from the label or whatever. And then just like a bunch of videos of them playing live.
Man.
Yeah, there's some great stuff. Like Hate 5-6 recorded a bunch of stuff. Like there's a couple podcasts that I listened to that provided some like good like brief history on the band. But the
late 2000s, like documenting all of these like underground bands is fucking wild because like there's so much information that's not there.
Yeah.
It's just like from like 06 to like 2012 before everything really started to become more accessible.
What even happened during those years? I don't even remember.
Right. There's still just so much shit that's not there. Like it's just, unless it was a larger act, I mean, it's impossible to find stuff.
There was even like an article. I tried to even like, there was like a zine even that had an interview with Punch that I think I could still maybe order it from somewhere, like a physical copy, but I was like, I just didn't jump on it. I was hoping maybe someone had digitized it and I would have done
Right.
it, but yeah. So that's what I got. I hope it suffices. But the main thing that we're going to be talking about today is the steak and potatoes of this record. You guys want to get into the track list here?
Let's do it.
All right. So right out of the gate, like classic track. This is the track that I associate this band with. It's the first thing I heard by this band. Do it yourself, DIY. Minute and 25, minute and a half of just like pure fury, just telling you basically to get off your fucking ass. The lyrics in this, like musically, this is great. And I definitely want to touch on that, but the lyrics alone are just like so impactful and immediately like had me hooked. You know, stop waiting for things to happen. The world doesn't owe you shit. The universe doesn't know you exist. Only you can make a change. That's like, it's so great.
I think Megan had a real knack for knowing what parts of the vocals to repeat, because what you read is like that's all the song lyrically, but especially the like the world doesn't know you shit, the universe doesn't know you exist. She repeats like at different times, like 3 or 4 times in the song, and that's a great line.
Yeah, I guess I did get a little tidbit on like some of the background of the lyrical themes of this. I guess Megan had like dinner with a friend, and the friend was just talking about life and literally said that line and was like, I'm gonna save it right up here. And so she did, and now we have the song.
Yeah, I love that she was like, I didn't see him for a long time, and next time I saw him, I told him about it. The next time I see him, I'll have to tell him it was in an episode of Girls.
So it's, you brought up lyrically, like, and that maybe, as we talked about the early part of this episode, that's a big thing for both you guys. I'm kind of in the realm of like, I kind of took that Kurt Cobain logic from years ago, like when I first read that, of like, oh, lyrics don't necessarily matter to me as long as the melody's good, right? But we all predominantly listen to music that doesn't have a shitload of melody in it. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of just a violent burst. It's a lot of soundscapes, right? When it comes lyrically. And when aggressive music that's as abrasive as this opening track has like a very positive, has a positive message, it's kind of nice, because I think a lot of actually I know for a fact most of our fucking parentals all thought this was a fucking phase, and we're just listening to it because we wanted to make our parents mad. Which in reality we were mad at them long before this. But it is really fun to hear, a positive lyrical kind of prose when it comes to this type of music, right? Because I mean, this is getting in the musical side of it a little bit here. I mean, it opens up like a lot of punk rock records do, just fucking feedback and kicks right in. It's really got 2 riffs in the whole track, because I mean it's a minute and some change. And it's kind of like this really big riff and these pummeling, pounding drums, and then it kicks into this power violence part. Am I accurate with that? Like just these blast beats and all sorts of shit. It's like, all right, I get it. And those are like the verse, like the verse and these like grindy parts. And then it's still kind of linear song structure in just a very small, quaint portion of it.
It's a very fluid record. It's a very forward moving record. If I had seen that, like this to me is like, this would have been like the perfect house show set. Like this EP in general. If I had seen this at a house show in Bowling Green, that would have blown my fucking mind. Like
right.
Easily. Yeah. This is a perfect just set. I know it's only 10 minutes, but if a band played like 10 minutes and these were the songs, I'd be over. Like this is the perfect band for me. Like they'd been my favorite band instantly. The feedback just like opening, I know it like in a weird way, especially listening back to it and really kind of like sitting with it. It kind of reminds me of like kind of like when a symphony warms up and you like almost think of like the like Megadeth, like symphonies of destruction, where things are, it kind of like a power violence hardcore way of just like, oh, like find your seats. Like here, you're going to sit with this for 10 minutes and it's going to be great. But it's a classic riff. It feels like a very classic kind of hardcore riff. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of beats you into submission with these like really fast parts. And Val's playing like the drums on this record are
Oh my
so
fucking
fun.
God.
Some of the fills on this are crazy. They're so good.
Once we get into the back half of this record, there's some drum parts in there. I actually stopped and kind of went back and went, "You're fucking kidding! Like, you're already playing fast. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, all right, it just to a point of like, all right, I got to hear more of this shit. Like, come on."
It's also wild that like the transition in a lot of parts is just a drum fill.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just like a part stops, he hits a
Biggie
little
bop.
drum fill, and then
Right.
like next part. Yeah.
I Austin, you brought up, and it's the name of our show with riffs, and like, I think when we first started doing this before Swindle came on full time, you know, he was on his retirement plan at that point. And, you know, we talked about what makes a riff initially, right? And, you know, chord progressions can be riffs. And when it comes to hardcore or like grind or power violence, when shit is as fast as it is, you're playing a 3-chord progression. It's a fucking riff because it's so fast.
Right.
You know, it's just like, it may not be like a traditional riff. Like it's not, you know, it's not a Black Sabbath riff, right? Like it's not something standard like that. It's not what the definition of a riff would be, but it's fast to fuck enough, and it's got enough variation and enough like oomph and aggression behind it that it's a fucking riff.
Yeah, for as fast as it's going, there are definitely parts that stick with me. There are catchy, like hooky parts.
Yep.
And it's melodic. Like this is
Yeah.
kind of
hell yeah. I can't wait for us to get into that.
Yeah, there are definitely some things that are very seem like almost like modern kind of influences in that. Like modern kind of, I don't want to say pop punk, but there are definitely some like there's some structures in there for sure. Swindle?
I think Jack did a good job in the recording, because you can hear like during the power violence fastcore parts, you can hear like every instrument separately and the entire riff. And that's not always the case in grind and power violence music.
Ew.
It's also, yeah, you can hear everything pretty clearly, but it's also the tone of those guitars and like the way the vocals are layered in there. It feels like it's being pushed very, like it's like almost like it's in the red because it's just so kind of like distorted in that way.
It
feels like the gain's all the way up.
Yep. It's brash. It sounds like everything. It really does sound like everything was dimed. It sounds like everything just went through. They did the Joe Perry shit in the Run DMC video. Everything's just dimed the fuck out. And I mean, it's loud. You can almost feel it coming through the headphones when you're listening to it. It's fucking loud. And Swindle, that's a good point on the production of this. Like the production, the mixing, and the mastering. Like it is very raw. It's very aggressive sounding, but he knows what he's doing when it comes to this style of music, which is very evident with this catalog. But this thing is pushing some fucking volume on it. Like the drums, the kick sounds like it might have been triggered just slightly because there is kind of a top end snap to it. Because it cuts through a lot of that. Like you can hear the kick really well, but it doesn't have that kind of sterile, maybe late 90s, early 2000s, like death metal kind of trigger to it. It's not a Pete Sandoval trigger. It's not something along those lines. It's not even like a Derek Roddy trigger, but it's there. And maybe he just has his kick drums fucking tight. I don't know, but like you can hear that thing kick through and it's cutting through the mix, which is so cool because like there's so much blasting and so much wall of sound shit on here that like to hear the kick drum on alone, like cutting through the mix, is fucking wild.
Yeah, this song fades basically right into the next song, Done, clocking in just over a minute, but it's fast, very fast, as we've kind of stated with a lot of songs on this record. I don't know who does backup vocals on this album. Maybe it's Keith, maybe it's Dan. I'm not exactly sure, but you do kind of have those like, there's moments where it almost feels like a kind of a classic power violence thing where it's almost like the Cookie Monster vocals, like the lack of interest type of like deep growl type of thing.
John, John does that a lot in Weekend Nachos.
From the there's those
earlier
first couple records. John from Weekend Nachos definitely I think he came into his own with maybe like Unforgivable and like Worthless and stuff, but if you listen to like the demo, and those like early releases, there's definitely like a Cookie Monster kind of delivery.
I heard those early releases, and I think our mutual friend Wyatt was listening to them, and I heard those vocals, and I was like, "That's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. I need to hear more of this shit." What's the name of this band? And he's like, Weekend Nachos. I was like, fuck, I've read about those guys in Decibel for years. I've never listened to them. It's like, all right, I'm pretty fucking sold on whatever this guy's doing.
And I would love to touch on that band at some point too, because
we will. But let's get back.
It's kind of funny that you bring it up because Punch and Weekend Nachos I essentially got into around the same time, so it was like
good time,
exactly what I needed to hear, and they're definitely like they stand out in their own right. But Done is it's such a it's fast, but everything cuts through. Especially this was maybe the first time I noticed that Brian's bass cutting through was because I think it sounds filthy, but it adds so much texture to the song in particular.
It sounds like a tube amp literally about to blow. And it's a tube amp about to blow, and it sounds like he just threw some whatever overdrive pedal he get on top of that and probably like crank the gain on it, because it's pretty fucked sounding.
Yeah.
And that in the best way possible. Like it's fucked. But it's one of those sounds that wouldn't fit in anything else other than something like this. It's that tool chest down a flight of stairs thing. Like it just has to just sound like destruction coming through.
Right.
I want to point out, you brought up the bass sound, but is that a Minor Threat style riff? Like at the beginning of this, like it just immediately brought up Minor Threat to me.
Sure.
Maybe Bad Religion a little bit in there as well.
I think it's all there.
I mean, Minor Threat definitely is an influence for sure. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I wrote in my notes that I bet this band had a lot of like wrist ringing going, like a lot of wrist stretches when they were on tour.
Oh my god!
Like from the drummer, from the guitarist, from the bassist, everybody was stretching them wrists.
I didn't think to look at Keith, but I wonder if it was all like, because we linked a lot of like live shows from this band in our notes, but I didn't think to look if he was like downpicking the entire time. It sounds like he would be.
Oh, there's no fucking way.
No, right, you don't think so?
There's no way. There's no way. I'm sorry. No. Like that would be, if he could do that. that man has conquered a feat that not many people could do, but logistic wise and muscle wise, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like to downpick that quick, like, oh my fucking god, that I
definitely
wouldn't want.
Definitely not like the
real, like the fast power violence part.
I wouldn't want to see anybody do that.
Yeah,
I'd just be going I'd be like his rotator cuff, his elbow, his wrist. The bills.
Picked his wrist clean off.
Just
this will be the second episode in a row we'd have to talk about somebody getting surgery for whatever,
just riffing too hard,
carpal tunnel.
There's some old like
Tommy John surgery.
There's some old like metal video where these guys are like headbanging at the front of the stage and their heads fall off. Like I could just picture that mid-set, just wrist flies off.
I like that though.
That hand.
Power violence musicians and Major League Baseball players getting the same fucking surgery, showing up to the same fucking clinic. Amazing.
Punch guitarist is out for the entire 2012 season because he got Tommy John surgery.
So I do like the song too lyrically, just because it again, it feels like a relatable thing where maybe you maybe let someone get the best of you, or maybe you made like mistakes previously, but you can like move forward, and like you are the person you are. You formed the personality and like ethics based on like your experiences, and you're able to kind of like take from that and learn and move forward. So again, I can't commend this album enough, or Megan really, just for putting down to paper what so many of us like think and feel. So great song. Time Apart.
Favorite song on the record?
This is a Punch song. One of the like, when I think of the band Punch, this is one of the songs I think of.
Yeah.
It's like this one, Stay Afloat from Push Pull, and also Positively Godfree from Push Pull. And this song is on my like gym playlist to this day.
Yeah. It's a good riff.
It's
a fast riff.
That fucking like break, and then she's just like screaming, I don't know how I let the bricks build up. I don't know how I let the bricks build up.
Yeah.
Like
it was between this track and the title track for me on this. This one just kind of took the cake. Like it just went overboard with it. It has this very anthemic sounding intro to it. You know, and this is where like, we talked about the production earlier. This is the track that really made me go, this production's just pushed. Everything is just really raw and just blowing in. The blending of like traditional hardcore and power violence to it almost veers on like grind speeds in this track.
It's fast.
It's really fucking fast. The melodic flourishes and the octave guitar work is where I noticed it. And I immediately went like, oh, this is like S&M Airlines era NoFX.
Right.
Like,
yes.
That's 100%. They're kind of kings of that octave work thing. And I heard that and was like, fuck, it's like the Decline or this. I went, shit, okay. The melodic flourishes, the big fucking build up and the pick scrapes on one side and like the chugging going on in the other and like the big mosh riff to kind of end the track.
Yeah.
Those are good track.
Yeah.
Good fucking track.
That's like the, you know, kind of put me back to go into like house shows for the first time. That like breakdown part. Cause I feel like with a band like this, and I'm sure there's so many examples of this where you could easily pick out where people would be jumping over each other and like doing the shout along parts, basically.
Oh,
like,
the pile on.
Yeah. It reminded me of like being in Swindle's house and the floor in his bedroom is about to fucking bust through. And I'm like, this is potentially very hazardous. You are not going to get your deposit back. Like,
yeah, I wish I could have seen them at like Chestnut Street House in Louisville, like here in Louisville, because they played here.
Really?
Or played in Louisville a bunch. I would have jumped off any number of televisions during fucking this song specifically. Just a stack of televisions. I would have.
Give me a television. I'm gonna jump over it.
I'm gonna jump off it.
I once saw Swindle. This was at a Sun show. It was the one with Sons and Demeanor. I once saw you climb atop an amp and dive off an amp into people. And like that image, like it was just, he was on the floor, then he was on the amp, then into people. And we're like, all right, this is that type of set.
He was still spry in those days, so he could still climb up.
This was after he broke his tooth at a show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Like this is after he had it fixed.
I'm sure the next set I was still just like arms crossed.
What was Demeanor? So like I understand. Yeah.
Having the time of your life. All right. Another great song. Planning is Easy. Very noisy and feedback driven, of course. But it's kind of has more of those like little melodic elements as well. Yep. It's catchy as hell. Again, gives me very classic kind of early hardcore vibes. But it's still fast, that's what's so surprising is that, and you know, I may bring this up again, but just that point of it being so fast, and yet there are definitely parts that stick with you and you remember, and they're catchy.
I think the melody on this album and how it's used makes it more memorable because it's not overused. It's just little flourishes here and there, and it's kind of it's like sprinkles on top of a cake or something. You know, it's just a very little kind of added thing. I mean, this track is another fucking blisteringly fast track. You know, the bass and drums along with the feedback at the intro, that ending riff is fucking rad on this one. Again, just another good, fast punk rock track.
Lyrically, I love it. Again, very relatable. Maybe things didn't go as planned. Like, I feel like maybe you try, like, I've certainly had moments in my life where you try to like plan out everything as much as you possibly can, but it never typically ends up going that way. And you might find yourself in a different place than you had initially imagined. And I think this is like a good reminder that maybe you should just like go with the flow, and maybe it's not always bad to end up in a completely different place. And, maybe it's for the better. Maybe it's a good thing that you ended up where you were. So really cool. Again, just very relatable, impactful lyricism.
The next song is called 4 Letters. This is the song that I specifically took note of. The second song I specifically took note about a drum fill just being the transition. And this is also another Cookie Monster yell. Yeah. Love that shit.
It's just some big dude at the back of the diner going like, I need more fries. Like, it's just fries. This, the fastest fucking track on the record.
Yeah, 32 seconds.
Has like 2 parts. It's got these huge fucking chords and this drum fill at the end that's just like, Jesus, come on. Was the drummer being paid double for like this record?
I hope.
I mean, I know it's hardcore, but like they at least was like, hey, we're gonna slip you a 5 spot.
I remember when I started, like, actually, instead of like listening to the record and taking notes along with it, I had to be like, all right, hold on a fucking second. All right, guys, like, let me go back. I gotta get that one extra tom hit here. Like, let me talk about that for a second. It's such a fun track. Again, just this, the pace, the movement of this record. We're trying to get to the end. We're trying to get to the last song. We're trying to make it under 10 minutes.
These last 3 fucking tracks are something fucking else.
Yeah.
Like, Time Apart is my favorite track on the record, but these last 3 tracks are just, God, something about these last 3 tracks is like, oh, okay. Like, if they played this album as just a set, someone's dying in that, 3 minutes. Someone's getting murked. Someone's losing a hand, a leg, an ear, whatever it is. They're gonna look like Foley after the IWA King of the Death match. Like, it's gonna be fucked.
Yeah, take your tough guy shit to the punch show. I'm sure.
Bye.
It does make me like super jealous that, seeing some of those shows, and they are like, a lot of the footage is available online on YouTube or whatever. Mm-hmm. It would have been something else to have seen this band play live for sure. But going from 4 Letters basically feeds right into The Chase, another fucking killer song. Plenty of riffs. It's pretty consistent with that like kind of classic hardcore beat throughout the whole song, but yeah, it's fun
until one fucking spot.
And there's so many holds in this, the catches. Yeah. So many fucking catches in this song.
There is a snare roll that goes on for like, I can't say a minute because it's not a fucking long song, but he is just rolling. I was like, that. I've always heard that the sad but true snare sound is the snare sound from hell. I completely disagree with that because this section that I'm talking about has the snare roll from fucking hell. Like, I don't know how he's playing it that fast for that long. There are death metal drummers that do gravity rolls and shit like the rubber pencil trick where like they can't do that for that long period of time. And I know he's beating the shit out of this snare and doing that. No wonder the set could only be 10 minutes. Like, this track is nuts. The intro drums are great. I love that. I like all the cymbal grabs and everything are fucking awesome. That's very like Paul Mazurkowitz from Cannibal Corpse, just the different cymbal grabs. Swindle's gonna get a kick out of this, but this track makes me think of that like first era of like No Rule.
Yeah.
Huh.
Like in a very strange way, like how the guitar is played, how the song's kind of structured, like kind of like has a weird not beat down part to it. Like makes me think of those early No Rule shows.
BG Zone.
That
No Rule.
For the millions who don't know who that is, that was the hardcore band that Dylan and I were the only 2 people in. We were the only 2 people in that band.
But I do see some comparisons, like just, kind of classic hardcore vibes as well. It's wild to think. I think, well, obviously you have members that were in another band. So I would think like these bands definitely played shows together, and they would probably likely have to do like double duty. I think there was even another band that shared some members with it was like Living Eyes was it one. I saw like some joint interviews perhaps, but
Right.
I couldn't imagine playing a set full of songs like this and then having to go and just do it again. So hopefully there was some breathing room, some bands in between.
I played one show ever with No Rule and 16 in the same show.
Yeah.
I think it was only one. It was like when I first started playing drums. The next day I had a bruise like this big on my inner thigh because I was just like smacking my thigh with the drumstick the whole time.
You're supposed to hit the drums, buddy.
Yeah, thank God I learned to play drums after that.
I think I did a triple duty set one time.
It
was that really long show we played at the Crow's Nest. I played with like Mike Wood and some kid on Mike Wood, Tyler Preston on drums, and some kid on guitar whose name I can't remember. But then I did a set with No Rule, and then I did a set with I may be getting a couple shows mixed together, but I know No Rule and Forefathers played some shows together, and I played double duty there. So maybe I am getting those two confused. But I've done double duty a lot, and it's a little interesting having to do that because by the time up, you're just wrecked.
Moving ahead to our final song, How Nothing Lasts. Just shy of 2 minutes, just under 2 minutes. I think this was definitely one of the most impressive drum performances on the record too, with the drum roll.
Oh,
so great. Another song that is very, very melodic, as we've mentioned throughout the record. But maybe my favorite part of the song in particular is the breakdown and the kind of gang vocal part. It's like, so impactful. And it has like some other like little guitar melodic lines that are kind of mixed just underneath it. But I love the kind of chorus or whatever the breakdown part of the song is so great.
In the part where like before that ending part, there's a part where Megan's saying like, make it count, like in succession over and over again. I think there's a guitar line in there that only happens once.
Yeah.
And I just love just like a little guitar transition happens one time and then they just move on from that. And I fucking love that.
The wild fucking drum intro on this, into an actual old school blast beat. It's not like the 2 feet and the snare. It's that old school, just 1 foot blast, one snare, just daka 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 daka, just over and over again. And it's so fucking cool to hear that because there's so much of that kind of traditional bomb blast throughout the whole record, where everything's just kind of firing at one time. I actually have in my notes like all hardcore should kind of sound like this, just because it's aggressive, it's in your face, and it does like the sound of the record matches what's being played. It's not overly produced, to quote the Cursed episode, it's not overly produced, it's not underproduced, it's not edited and compressed way too much, and it really adds a character, and the production almost sounds like an instrument itself on this record. The bass and drum build up with the gang vocals, we talked about that. That's another like pile on section. The big ending kind of breakdown section. I will say that I think they're playing so aggressively at the end. One of the guitars is just slightly out of tune.
Good.
And it adds to the fucking record because you only notice it because there's like these kind of big chugging parts, but there's this little kind of noodle thing going on under it, or this little passage, and you just kind of hear it. It's just slightly there. It may even just be like an intonation thing, but it's just kind of there.
Well, and I don't know if I mentioned before, but this was all tracked live to tape too.
There you go. Just playing a couple takes. You got it. The third one's the best, and just fuck it. It's going on tape.
Definitely.
Great ending track. Ending track.
I mean, lyrically too. I mean, it again could hit home for anyone. Anyone can relate to this. Like, and maybe needs the reminder that like time is a fleeting thing, and just because something happened or something ended doesn't mean it didn't happen, and you should, make what time we have left count.
You can't make it last, so make it count.
Right. All in all, I mean, songs on this, fantastic. It's really just a fun, awesome 10 minutes. After this record, they did release a third and final album titled They Don't Have to Believe on August 19th of 2014. It was released through Death Wish. Again, another album that was just tracked live to tape during March and April of 2014 at the Atomic Garden Studio with Jack. They did a mini tour of the East Coast and Midwest. They played some dates. I saw they played in Chicago. Their Facebook page, you can still access it and kind of roll through some of that stuff and see all the flyers. But this tour kind of culminates with one final date in San Francisco. And so then after the tour, Megan essentially announces that she would be leaving Punch, and that was it. Like most bands, there's likely some ups and downs, and before that it had kind of gotten close to ending. I don't really need to touch on that.
Yep.
We got what we got. It was some great releases. And some of these members continue to do projects as well. I'm sure we'll touch on a few of them in the recommendation, but I guess maybe I heard that Dan lives in Europe. He has a screen printing business apparently. Keith plays in a great band called Torso. Megan played in some other projects, No Secrets, Super Unison. Took a little break for a little while, I think, but you might see Megan play live with bands like King Woman and The Armed. I've been seeing a lot of those posts recently.
I think I saw Megan post that King Woman's playing in fucking Chicago like next month.
Yes, King Woman is playing at the Salt Shed, I believe, next month, and it's going to be for the Jesus Lizard shows. It'll be like Jesus Lizard, Sextile, Provoker. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to go, but I would love to see that. Sounds like it would be a fucking great time.
You should go. Why wouldn't
all
you?
those,
I would.
all those
I
fucking
don't know what I'm
weddings.
gonna be doing.
Just
Yeah,
go.
I just got a new job.
Like,
I gotta.
You need to see the Bears lose again. Let's
Oh,
just go to the King Woman show.
Bite me.
I want to go back to what Swindle brought up with Chris's quote in the Cursed episode, talking about how when you get into punk rock and you get into hardcore, you kind of just have to be, I'm paraphrasing, but you basically have to be okay with just like burning out quickly. And you have to make that decision. And it seems like this maybe was one of those bands that just went through all the ups and downs in a short period of time and, had a really good catalog and a really cool catalog of music that's respected. And it was just, all right, it's our time. We had let's do this. Let's go about our business. But also being a woman in the hardcore scene during this era, when things are a little bit different now. I'm not saying things are great or perfect, especially in underground music. But being a woman during this era in a hardcore band was a lot different than it is now in the underground scene. So I'm sure that had a lot of aspects to it as well. And, shit happens, and you got to make the best decision for yourself. And sometimes it is leaving a project or a passion that you're really, happy with and that you really want to do, but sometimes it just doesn't give you back what you're putting into it.
And by all accounts, I mean, Megan, when I've listened to the interviews, is, very much appreciates and loves that time in her life. I mean, this is like first band. Like that's crazy. I'm sure it wasn't easy to make that decision, but it seems like everybody's continued to create in some aspect.
Can't make it last, so make it count.
There it is. But yeah, to just close, I appreciate Swindle for passing the torch, passing some great jams. This is a record that I've just continued to love and appreciate each time I listen to it. It's often in my rotation. And yeah, it's just, there's really nothing more relatable than just like some fast hardcore with some very topical, kind of punchy lyrics, pun intended.
Whose legs do you got to pull to get that other shit on streaming?
Right.
The Push Pull album and the Punch self-titled record. Whose legs you got to pull to get that on Spotify? But you can buy them on Bandcamp, I guess.
Yeah, probably go to
if you want if you want to like support people and give them money. I don't know why you'd want to do that.
I'm sure Death Wish has like a bunch of shit as well, or any of those labels.
Yeah,
so
probably.
Yeah, check it out. It's great. Punch. All right, this is the time in the show where we like to share things we've been listening to, things that we've been checking out. Since we talked about a Punch record, I wanted to kind of reiterate that these people still make music. That's really rad. Some of these projects are still active. Some of them are no longer, but you can still check out these great records. Megan was involved for a handful of years in a kind of like almost, I think this project started almost immediately after Punch did, but Super Unison was great. I think they started out as a 4-piece, then became a 3-piece. Features Megan on vocals and bass. And then a member of Snowing, I think, was involved with this band as well. There was the debut record, Auto, and the sophomore and final record, Stella, that were both released through Death Wish, which still involved Jack Shirley. I think he did everything for the first record and then only mastered the sophomore record because they recorded with Steve Albini in Chicago. So really great. It's a little bit different. It still has that punk edge, but I feel like it still kind of has more of like a post-punk kind of vibe. A little bit different, but still fantastic records. Keith, if you love Punch, if you want a similar kind of fast, just kind of like aggressive punk band, you can listen to this D-beat hardcore band that Keith is in called Torso. I'm going to recommend their Home Wrecked 7-inch EP that came out in 2021 through Revelation Records. It's fast, it's fun, it's fucking raw. Recorded, mixed, and mastered by Jack Shirley as well. It features 2 original songs and a cover of The Faith's Your Ex. So check them out. That shit's cool.
For me, my first rec is a hardcore album. It's the album Persona by Gel, 13 minutes long. Hardcore for the freaks, as they like to be known as. I think this record was put out by Blue Grape Music. It came out on August 16. I saw them live like a month ago. They were real fun. All the records are fun, hardcore, 13 minutes, 3 chords, just the whole time, front to back, just 3 chords.
Blues record.
My second record is Uniforms American Standard, released on August 23 by Sacred Bones Records. Label mates with Thou, good friends with Thou. 4 songs, like just over 40 minutes, but the first track is 20 minutes long.
Sure is.
That first song,
this album.
that first song, there's a lot of drone going on, and the other songs have varying sounds. None of them sound exactly the same, but it's a fun listen. And I mean, if you're having a bad day, don't listen to that album because it is heavy. They get into some shit, and so content warning for eating disorders on that record, definitely.
Again, I don't like lyrics. I don't need any point.
Hates
I just
words.
listen to death metal. I just listen to death metal that has that wants to talk about disemboweling people and having no sentimental feelings. But anyway, the newest single from Fit for an Autopsy, Savior of None, Ashes of All. It's the second single off the upcoming full-length release, The Nothing That Is, that will be released on October 25th through Nuclear Blast Records. This is a kind of a weird one for them. It very much sounds like Darkest Hour or like some of the kind of Boston metalcore that was very prevalent in the early to mid 2000s. I'm a big fan of this band. This is one of the few deathcore bands that does the riff the right way and adds kind of a lumbering kind of, I think Metal Sucks calls them the elephant marching riffs. Does those really well. Again, Will Putney production. Again, can't wait for this record. I've been a fan of this band for a long time. Speaking of bands I've been a fan of for a very long fucking time, Nile, and their newest release, The Underworld Awaits Us All, is their 10th full-length release. It's their first in 5 years. It's also their first through Napalm Records. If you're familiar with this band, their kind of spin on death metal is it's a technical kind of brutal. It's a technical, brutal form of death metal that usually follows Egyptian lore or kind of Lovecraftian vibes to it, but a lot of it's based off Egyptian lore and legend. And this album is definitely long awaited. This is a fucking great record. Where I work, I've been outside for the last couple days, so like I have had a couple of the riffs off this record just on loop in my fucking head, just thinking about, okay, how have they outdone themselves this far into their career? This is probably the first album from this band I've been really anticipating since their 2007 release, Ithyphallic. This shit's tight. There's a track on here with a really long song title that's about apes. And when Nile has a long song title, they're fucking cooking. Check that shit out. Napalm Records, Nile, The Underworld Awaits Us All.
Tight. Check it all out. That's what we've been listening to as of late. You can always follow us for any updates on the show at Riff Worship Pod, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We also have an email address at Gmail, riffworshippod@gmail.com. You can reach out to us there, say hey, ask anything you want, tell us what we're doing wrong, because I'm sure we are. We have podcasts or we have playlists available in the descriptions below. Hits from the Crypt on Apple Music and Riffs on repeat through Spotify, depending on what streaming service you are listening to this on. Dylan also does reviews most Fridays about modern records that are coming out, things that you should definitely check out. It is called Reviews from the Dillbozer's Den. It's a great program, real great folks over there. Great editor as well, love him. But for
Too much
myself, for Dylan, for Swindle, this has been our discussion on Punch and their EP, Nothing Lasts. Check it out. We'll see you next time. Riff Worship.